Hello, my name is Oliver Gassner, and in the next book review, I'm giving you a glimpse into the Nanotech Future. Eine deutsche Version dieser Rezension gibt es später auf diesem Kanal, gleich danach wahrscheinlich. Okay, welcome to this podcast. My name is Oliver Gassner, and this is a podcast for the playlist Literaturwelt. And when I'm reading English books, or after I read English books better, I'm going to do a review both in English and in German on this channel. The German version will also go into my podcast that you can subscribe to at ogok.de. And this is on my YouTube channel, Oliver Gassner, which you're invited to subscribe, thumb up, recommend, and whatever you like. I haven't done an English playlist yet. I think I should do this. Write me if you want me to do a special English playlist so you can only look at the English videos. Okay, today we're talking about this book, Neal Stephenson, Diamond Age. I've started reading science fiction, starting with Altered Carbon. This already appeared here on the YouTube channel, but it's not yet in the podcast feed. It's going to come to the podcast feed soon. And also I read Anything by Neal Stephenson just before this. And I'm also gonna read the Baroque trilogy, but actually I got them in German. Originally I wanted to give them away as a gift, and that's why. But I think I'm rather happy that I got them in German, because Neal Stephenson isn't the easiest author to read in English, because he's very often very creatively with the language, especially in Anthem. Here it's sometimes very poetic, or he's doing some kind of Victorian slang here. And so sometimes it's rather challenging. And I actually had a kind of a glitch when I read it, because at one point he explained something that seems to be central to the plot. I remember he explained it, but I don't remember how he explained it exactly, but I have a rough idea. So what's the Diamond Age about? It's about a nanotech future. So nanotechnology is pretty prevalent, not only for producing things, but also there are lots of nanobots in the air that can kill you, that can do evil things to you, that can spy on you, and so on and so on. And the nation states have actually crumbled. That's something that you can also read about in Snow Crash by Neal Stephenson. So in some of his books, nation states have crumbled or are irrelevant, also in Anthem. And instead of that, we have files, spelled PH, YLES. So tribes, you could call them. And there are several tribes. There are the Nipponese, so the rest of Japan, the Nipponese tribe, the Victorian tribe, that is made up of Anglo-Americans, so English Americans, English speakers, but they also take in people if they vow to stick to the values of the tribe. We have the Cantonese. We have, I think, the Indians. We have the Zulus that comprise Africans, not African Americans, I think, but Africans, maybe also African Americans, you don't know. And each tribe has their speciality. For example, the Victorian tribe is pretty much money-oriented and pretty much technology-oriented, so they're creating nanotechnology. The Zulus are pretty warlike or aggressive, or not aggressive, but they're warriors, and so on and so on. You can't really stick a label like that to each and every tribe, but yeah. And the order on the planet is kept up not by the UN or something, but by something called the Common Economic Protocol. So if somebody steals from somebody else or somebody attacks somebody else, then this is handled by the Common Economic Protocol that many, but I assume not all, these groups have subscribed to. Yeah, and there's something like the Celestial Kingdom. So that's the traditional Chinese, group, and they also have the fists of what's it called? The fists, who are mainly a group of, I think, Fists of Celestial Harmony they're called. So they are a group of warriors or terrorists or guerrilla that try to drive all the foreigners out of the Chinese mainland. Also, these files, they have their headquarters, or they have their quarters everywhere on the planet. So it's not that like they have a country, but they have like different sections of a town in different countries. So you can travel from the area of your file around the world. Okay, what's the story about? The story is about several people that we get to watch. Sometimes we lose them out of sight again, or just know about or learn about them very indirectly. And so there's Nell and her brother. Yeah, Nell and her brother, and she gets a book that was created by a Mr. Hackworth, and Mr. Hackworth is a Victorian. So Nell is an underdog. She's a small child in the beginning, like 4, 5, 6, and Mr. Hackworth is an engineer, a Victorian engineer who has a wife and a daughter. Also, this daughter later plays a role, and I already forgot her name, because that role is not so central later. But he creates on contract by Mr. Finkel McGraw, I think it's called. He's I seem to remember, Japanese-looking Victorian who wants to create a young ladies primer. So he says the skills that will be needed in the future by our kids cannot be covered by the education they get from the Victorians. We need to create for young ladies, or no, actually only for his niece, who also plays a role, and also kind of gets out of sight later by his niece, he wants him to create a book, a primer, so a basic reading and learning book. He wants to create him a primer for this young lady, which is interactive, and this book is supposed to take care of her education, which is a very interesting idea. Actually, she also goes to some institute, but and all the 3 girls actually meet at that institute. But the primer plays a central role in all this. Throughout the book, we get to watch Nell in her adventures through the primer. So first she has her puppet and her teddy bear and so on as company, and they teach her things and then die, yeah, in this primer. And she is on a quest to get 12 keys to unlock the castle in which her brother is actually, at least in this fiction, imprisoned. And on this journey, she learns stuff. For example, more or less, she learns how to program. So she learns how to deal with Turing machines. She learns about Turing machines, and she learns how to program Turing and design Turing machines. Actually, the book is from, here it says the first hardcover edition is from 1995. So I'm reading really old books here. But it's very interesting. For example, this primer, in order to interact with the child, it does everything automatically, but there needs to be a human actor, or in this case, an actress that talks to the child, because they don't want to synthesize these voices. There are human actresses that act in so-called reactive, so reactive movies, and they just get the lines and then sometimes improvise and interact, and you can interact with them, but not physically, but only in this electronic surrounding. And the weird thing here is that this actor only gets the lines she's supposed to say, but she doesn't know. She knows the name of Nell, but she doesn't know who Nell is, and she doesn't hear what Nell says. So she only gets these lines. And this actress and her boss, they are also main figures, and the boss later becomes pretty important. Then there's a judge and his assistants, and he plays a role in the beginning. Actually, he's sentencing Nell's father to death because he attacked the Zulu, and the Zulus then take him prisoner, and that's what happens in the first pages. And you think this kind of guy is going to play a role through the whole of the book. He just kills them off on the first, I don't know, 20-30 pages. Who else do we watch? Actually, those are mainly the people we watch. Then there is a Dr. X, he gets possession of this primer, or of the construction, or actually he makes Hackworth create another primer, and he's using this other primer in a very, very special way, and this will later in the book create a very, very revolutionizing new group in this global scheme and balance of groups. So Neal Stephenson is a world creator, and for example, this nanotech thing, there's some things that are a little strange. For example, the Victorians have mechanical horses that they ride around on, because, well, they realized maybe after an atomic incident, or after a world war, or whatever, or maybe some kind of a biological hazard or whatever that humankind created, they said, we need stronger values. We need to look back into history to a set of stronger values, and both the Victorians and the Celestial Kingdom go back to some kind of stable world model with honor and tradition and so on. And so they use this model as their blueprint for their society, and in order to prevent another world-changing war or whatever. And for example, there are some things that you don't really get. They drive when they drive or when they move, they sometimes have some kind of power skates or power bikes or whatever. And this power bike seems to be printed by the feed. That's this thing where the nanotechnology comes out of. This is just printed every morning instead of just using yesterday's. Some of the stuff is not really obvious why you should spend the energy and the material each and every time. This feed has a very special property. This feed is centrally controlled. So it's not an internet where everything's connected with everything and everybody can input stuff, but it's a central thing. So the feed controls what you can create. Yeah, but it seems to be able to create weapons, actually, what we learn later. So it doesn't control a whole lot, but probably that doesn't allow you to create a nuclear bomb, which would theoretically be possible, I assume. And this feed technology, that's the revolution, is to be this centralized technology is to be replaced by a non-centralized technology, the so-called seeds, where you just take, I imagine it's kind of an egg and you drop it to the ground and something comes out of it. And that could also be a nuclear bomb. So a decentralized model to create nanotechnological items, whatever. So, as all books by Neal Stephenson, this book is packed with ideas, with interesting models. There's a society that kind of does computing by drumming and having sex and by exchanging nano probes, and Hackworth comes in contact with this society and uses it to create something new. And I don't want to spoil you, but if you read the book, it's with like with anything, each and every theme that pops up, even each and every information that pops up, could be a very important thing to understand what's happening in the whole composition. So it's like a giant jigsaw puzzle where everything that happens can be important. There's one very interesting idea. I think that doesn't play such a central role. At one point, this seems to be the plot, but isn't. So I can maybe refer to it here, and that is, what if you have a society that heavily depends on exchange of payment data that is encrypted? What if you had somebody creating a technology to make this encryption invalid, so you could just buy everything or destroy all the money, or create money out of nothing? We have very interesting correlations here to Bitcoin, and this was really many years before. I think Bitcoin was created in roughly 9 years ago, and this book is 1995, so more than 20 years ago. What if you could just create money out of nothing? I mean, Bitcoin doesn't create money out of nothing, but what if you could hack this? So when quantum computing comes, does all Bitcoin just go poof and it's not worth anything anymore? I'm not too much in the technology of Bitcoin, but it's based on encryption, and quantum computing is supposed to make our current encryption schemes pretty worthless. So what about stuff that is based on encryption? And this is also an idea that is played with here in the book. And at some point I thought, okay, that's the thing that's going to happen. But it's ultimately about this creating seeds. That's also that's not so much a spoiler, actually, but that's also very characteristic of Neal Stephenson's book. You read like 100, 200, 300 pages. This book is, how many pages is it? Almost 500 pages. And you read 200-300 pages, and you have still no idea where this is heading. You get all the puzzle pieces, but you don't get a glimpse of what they are supposed to add up to. So but that's kind of fascinating, because you can trust Neal Stephenson to lead you into a new world with this plot. Sometimes the end is somewhat trivial, but you never know. Okay, recommendation. Yes, I recommend reading this book, especially if you like Neal Stephenson, especially if you like science fiction, especially if you like really creating a world, not just creating some kind of item and that's kind of set in a very similar culture than you are already in. But if you're into creating authors creating new cultures based on the cultures that we know, then Neal Stephenson and The Diamond Age, or A Young Lady's Illustrated Primer, is definitely a book to read. And same goes with almost everything by Neal Stephenson, except for a Zodiac, which is very short. Try to read it like constantly and in a short time, and pay attention to detail, because stuff might happen to you, like what happened to me, something that happened to me, that I at some point wasn't sure what seeds were, and I knew they were talking about it, but and then I finally, I think, grasped it again. Okay, I'm gonna add buying links for this book to the German edition of this podcast or a video cast on blog.literaturwelt.de or blog.literaturwelt.de. Literaturwelt is literature world in German, literaturwelt.de. And I'm both going to add the German and the English version. This time I didn't have a look at reading samples from the German version, but I trust that Neal Stephenson has good translators. Thanks. I'd love a thumbs up. I'd love a star, whatever, like, share, subscription of my channel, Oliver Gassner, on YouTube. That would be great. Please leave a comment if you have any. If I make very blatant English mistakes, then please alert me to those. Yeah, you can leave comments on YouTube, Oliver Gassner. You can leave comments on blog.literaturwelt.de. You can leave comments for the English version here also on ogok.de, where I'm gonna post the English version and the German podcast and the German version. So far, so good. Bye-bye. Live long, prosper, and what did I always say? May the Schwartz be with you. Right. I have that tagline memorized in German. Okay. Bye-bye.